Well, hi, buddy, John Elzinga, and welcome back to It's a Great Day to Serve the Lord. I'm obviously in a different situation today as I'm filming from my car. And, it's not a very attractive environment, I guess you could say. I usually film this from my patio, which exposes me to a lot of noise, frankly. And this is very nice in terms of its quietness. I wish I had a soundproof room to film these things in, but I thought I'd try this for once. And the topic for our devotional today is defining servant leadership. Define servant leadership. No, I won't. In my seminars in servant leadership, you would think, as is customary, that I would provide a definition of the subject matter that we're talking about. I won't, I don't, and I don't think you should either. Servant leadership, I don't think, can be really defined. You can't nail it down. It's about perspective. It's about motive. It's about qualities and characteristics and behaviors of the person leading, the person who is the servant leader. Frankly, servant leadership is about 1,000 things, usually little things that don't get attention, that aren't noticed by the masses, that aren't written in books. In fact, speaking of books, in my book, Leadership Qualities That People Crave, I am upfront about the fact that I won't give a definition of servant leadership. I actually, in fact, in the rest of the book, I expose 12 qualities or characteristics or behaviors of a servant leader. And actually what's important is what the master has to say. And Jesus says, he's talking to his disciples in Matthew 20, he says, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man, and that's himself he's talking about, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. It starts with perspective. That is a perspective. Why did Jesus come? To serve, it says. The master of the universe came to serve. So why did you come? That is to say, why did you rise to the position that you're in right now? To be on top? To be in control? To look down on people? I know you're not going to say that. To look down on people? To yield power? Or did you come to look up? To serve? To care for those around you of whom you can make a difference? To use your unique position to help others? To push others forward? Is that why you came? If you're an employer or have others that report to you in some way, here's what I think that you should think about. Care for them. The people around you, the people under your employ, the people that report to you. Care for them in a way that they know that you care for them. One day, Jesus, you know this parable very well. One day, Jesus met a woman at a well. And he's asking for her for a drink. And first of all, men don't go up to women in the middle of the day and ask for a drink. And secondly, it's a Samaritan woman on top of that. And he approaches her, and Jews don't approach Samaritans to begin with. It's like oil and water. And so when the Samaritan woman came to draw water in John chapter 4, it says, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" And his disciples had gone to town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Now, the first thing I want you to notice here is that he talked to her. As simple as that. He engaged her in conversation. And of course, the discussion was about water. It was about living water, and that Jesus is the living water. But now watch this. He told her, "Go tell your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You are right to say you have no husband. The fact is you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you've said is quite true. Now, friends, let's put the sinfulness aside, the 5 husbands and living with a guy that's not her husband. Let's put that aside for a minute, because I want you to notice something. Jesus demonstrated, now given he's God and he knows everything, what every person who is led by someone wants. He knew her. He knew her. He knew about her relationships. He knew about her life. He knew about her marriages. He knew about what her familiar life was all about. And that demonstrated to her how important she is. There's a story I read once about Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Atlantic. And, I always thought of Virgin Atlantic as the Virgin Airlines. And then I know they have cruise lines, and apparently they have hotels. And I hope I'm telling this story right, but it's the point of the story that's the most important. The story goes that one day Virgin Atlantic had bought this hotel, and one day he walks in this hotel, and he had an appointment. I think it was with the general manager, and a meeting with him, and so he walks in, and he's in the lobby area, and there's this woman, probably a maid, who is vacuuming the carpeting. He walks right up to her, talks to her, engages her in a conversation, finds out who she is and what she's all about. In fact, according to the story, he talked to her 15 or 20 minutes ahead of his appointment with this general manager. And that alone is pretty startling. And then the story goes, about 6 months later, he comes back to this same hotel. He walks in the door. Now, this maid, or whatever position she had been promoted, and she was now behind the registration desk. And he walks right up to her, and let's call her Mary for a minute. He walks right up to her and says, "Hi, Mary, how are you? And and he asks about her daughter, because apparently in their 6 months ago discussion, she had talked about a procedure that her daughter had to go through, and he asks her by name about her daughter and how she was doing." Wow. That's servant leadership. That's what a servant leader does. He knows the people around him. He knows the people that work with him, that work for him. He or she, that is to say. Now, it could be that he has a photographic memory. The probability is he is like many servant leaders. Later on, at some point, he takes out his little pocket notebook and writes down her name and her daughter's name and the situation, etc., to keep that as a reminder when he would come back again. That doesn't matter. The point is, she was so significant to him that he even wrote it down in his little notebook. She's not the general manager. She's not the assistant manager. She's not anybody of any importance, you would say, in terms of the lines of responsibility within a hotel. But she was important to him. The perspective of a servant leader is to serve, and part of that serving is knowing the people that you serve. That's why you can't define servant leadership. You can't nail it down. It's not one thing. It's not an act or a position. It's this constant, never-ending desire to serve, and the possibilities are unlimited. As I mentioned in my book, leadership qualities that people crave. I don't define servant leadership. In fact, I go on to identify at least 12 behaviors, characteristics of a servant leader. And this is not the venue, the medium to disclose that right now. I'm not giving you a seminar. This is a devotional about servant leadership. You see, servant leadership is about the little things. This is about the parable of the talents, and you probably know it well. And there's some people that the master gives certain portions of his investments to them to take care of while he's gone, and he comes back to see how they've done with them. And you know, some of them are not that big; they're not that significant. And at the end, he comes back and they have this discussion, and they reveal what they did with the talent, what they call talents. And the master said to him, to this one, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful and trustworthy. You have been faithful and trustworthy over little. I will put you in charge of many things. Share in the joy of your master." It's about the little things, my friend. It's about the little things, the unseen things, the unnoticed things. Back in November, I produced a devotional called An Angel at Mariners Church, and I talked about a story. And by the way, if you want to re-watch it, there's a little link up here that you can click on, that you can go back and watch that. Yeah, I called it An Angel at Mariners Church. It's about a real story about when I went and worshipped with my daughter and her husband at Mariners Church in Irvine, and they have it's a big church, big parking lot, and I was getting lost in the parking lot, and there was a couple unknown to me that were following me to make sure I found my car. It's a very insignificant thing to do, a very unseen thing to do. It's not something you post on your Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. And I thought that this little act of service was so significant, that the fact that it is about the little things, that I sent this thing out to many pastors and had it sent out to many pastors. And because I thought that that's something they should show their staff. Whether they did or not, I don't know. But one of the people that I sent it to was a senior pastor of one of the largest churches in America. My wife and I used to go to that church for a very short time, for a couple of years. And we've been away from that church now because of a move for over 5 years. I sent the link to him and I said, "Hey, I don't even know if you remember me," although I did meet with him, and he know who I was, and he was gracious enough to endorse my book, Leadership Qualities People Crave. Anyway, I said, "Hey, I don't even know if you remember me, but this happened to me, and I thought it was significant. I thought, your staff might want to see this. I thought you might want to know about it." And you know what? He emailed me back. Not only did he email me back, but he said that he noted that he had watched the video, and that reminding him that little things are important, little things are significant, the unseen things are major things, and that he needed to see that. Do you know how significant that response was to me? You know how meaningful that response was to me? This man, this senior pastor of a very large church, the church is over 20,000 people. He's a busy guy. He's got a lot of things to do. He's got a big staff. He's very important. He's making a major impact in the kingdom of God. And I'm just this former parishioner of his. I'm just this nobody who used to go to his church that hasn't for over 5 years. Why would he pay any attention to me at all? But he's faithful in little things, in the small things. Just by responding, he told me I was important. He told me I was significant. He told me I mattered. He told me that I mattered to him. He told me what I had to say mattered. That's servant leadership. That's a servant leader. And so, my friends, please understand, servant leadership is not something you can clearly define. It's not something you can nail down. But it starts with your perspective, a perspective about serving and your willingness to go out of your way for seemingly insignificant things and insignificant people, to pay attention to those things that are not seen, those small acts of service. And when you do, someday you may hear those most coveted words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That's my devotional for this week. And I would so appreciate if you would forward this, if you would send this link off to other people to see it and to hear it. If you would like this message, if you would please subscribe to this channel, I would so appreciate that. And if you'd supported this channel, thank you very much. If you'd like to support it, just send me an email to john@johnelzinga.com. I'll send you back a link in which you can make a donation. Well, God bless you, and remember, it's a great day to serve the Lord.